Okay, so we actually started here and ran into some difficulties understanding exactly how we substitute when we're doing what we're about to do. So I'm going to go to this example that we used after we did a lot of the other stuff to be sure that there's something we really understand, that there's something very important that we really understand. Now ignore the writing in yellow and just look at what I've got here. Okay, f of x is 1 over x. So, what's f of 2? Well, x has been replaced by 2. Here we have f of x, here we have f of 2. So we see that x is now 2. Well, that means that this x is now 2, so we have 1 over 2. So f of x equals 1 over x becomes f of 2 equals 1 over 2. Similarly, f of x plus h. X has been replaced by x plus h. So that is equal to what? Well, if f of x is 1 over x, then f of x plus h is 1 over x plus h. X has been replaced by x plus h, so x over here has to be replaced by x plus h. What is f of aardvark? Well, x now has the value aardvark, whatever that means. Okay, so that 1 over x has to have the value 1 over aardvark. X has been replaced by aardvark, so we replace x by aardvark. So what is f of g of x? Well, from the pattern that you see here, it should be pretty obvious that since x has been replaced by g of x, then we better replace this x by g of x, so that if f of x is 1 over x, excuse me, f of g of x is 1 over g of x. Okay. Now the reason I do this is because in every other example I told everybody what g of x was, and instead of writing down what f of g of x is, just with the g of x symbols, they're worrying about what g of x was. And that was causing confusion, that was causing errors. Okay, so here we don't know what g of x is, so we don't have that confusion. We simply know that if f of x is 1 over x, f of g of x is 1 over g of x. Whatever this has to do with x, when you see f of g of x, you do that with g of x. Now, if g of x happens to be, say, 2 to the x, then what's f of g of x equal? Well, first of all, f of g of x equals 1 over g of x. That's interconvertible. We always want to write down that step, because if we don't, we're skipping a step that might be important and might thereby, if we skip a step, we're always taking a chance. And since composite functions are a bit of a challenge, not a bad one, they're bigger challenges, but it's a bit of a challenge for most students, we don't want to be skipping steps. Not until we've been tested and certified that we know this well enough to do it on a test. We always want to write out this step. No matter whether we know what g of x is or not, we write out this step and then we worry about g of x. So we write f of g of x equals 1 over g of x. And now we know that g of x is 2 to the x, so that 1 over g to the x, of course, is then 1 over 2 to the x. So that f of g of x is 1 over 2 to the x. We don't write that out without the intermediate step. Okay, so we have other examples here, but let's make sure we really understand that principle.